have concerns my wife is trying to have me.
Years later, her body was discovered.
Describe this pain that still sits in the pit of my heart.
Fade in to a serene view of Liberty Station, the gentle waters of San Diego Bay glittering under the sunlit sky. The peaceful scenery belies the turmoil that once unfolded here. This is where Elizabeth Sullivan, a 32-year-old mother of two, lived and was last seen alive in October 2014. Her life in San Diego, marked by her bright smile and charismatic presence, was darkened by shadows of domestic unrest and hidden fears. As we explore the corners and corridors of Liberty Station, we uncover the chilling story of Elizabeth's disappearance and the harrowing journey to unravel the truth. Elizabeth Sullivan, originally from Virginia, moved to San Diego after falling in love and marrying Matthew Sullivan, a United States Navy sailor. The bright California sun marked a fresh start for Elizabeth, but her new life was far from trouble-free. Known for her vibrant personality and infectious laughter, Elizabeth was a natural social butterfly, cherished by friends as much for her quick wit as for her empathetic nature. A mother of two young girls, she juggled parenting with personal aspirations. Elizabeth was creatively inclined, often channeling her thoughts and emotions into writing, which not only served as a refuge, but also hinted at her deeper turmoils. Her friends describe her as charismatic and fashionable, someone who could light up the room with her presence, yet who also struggled with the storms brewing behind her sunny facade. Her marriage, while initially filled with love, increasingly became a source of distress. Arguments and discord marked Elizabeth and Matthew's relationship, with unresolved disputes about money, fidelity, and parenting. The marriage was further strained by Matthew's naval career, which often took him away from home, leaving Elizabeth to manage household responsibilities alone. In San Diego, Elizabeth found herself largely isolated, her life starkly contrasting with her vibrant public persona. Her interactions in the local community, though positive, were superficial, failing to provide the support she desperately needed. Behind closed doors, she faced Matthew's growing unpredictability and temper, which friends suggest could have been exacerbated by the pressures of his military duties and their marital issues. The move from Virginia to California, meant to be a new beginning, soon mirrored the confinement of her personal struggles, as Elizabeth grappled with the duality of her external and internal worlds. Her life, full of potential and new beginnings, increasingly became overshadowed by loneliness and despair, setting the stage for her mysterious disappearance in October 2014. The vibrant, life-loving Elizabeth, adored by those who knew her best, found herself caught in a web of personal conflicts that concealed her growing fears and the threat they posed to her safety. Elizabeth Sullivan's disappearance in October 2014 came as a shocking and sudden blow to all who knew her. The events leading up to her vanishing trace, a timeline filled with routine days that spiraled into silent alarms. On October 13, 2014, Elizabeth was seen for the last time. That morning, like many others, began ordinarily as she took care of her young daughters at their home near Liberty Station. Neighbors saw her as usual, lively and engaged with her children, showing no signs of distress. Her husband, Matthew, was reportedly on shore duty, a brief pause in his otherwise demanding naval responsibilities. Throughout the day, Elizabeth was active on her phone, texting friends and family, sharing snippets of her day, and making plans for the upcoming weekend. Her last text message was sent around 3 p.m. After that, her phone activity ceased. Matthew claimed to return home later that evening to find the house quiet, dinner started but not finished, and no sign of Elizabeth. He told friends and the police that this wasn't the first time Elizabeth had left home after an argument, suggesting she might need some time alone. Matthew's narrative painted a picture of marital instability, hinting that Elizabeth's departure might have been voluntary. He reported her missing the next day, on October 14, 2014. In his call to the San Diego Police Department, he alternated between concern for his wife and insinuations about her mental health and purported need for solitude. Police initially treated the case with routine scrutiny. The search began at the Sullivan home and expanded to local areas Elizabeth was known to frequent. Her car was found parked in its usual spot, her wallet still at home. Interviews with friends and family pieced together Elizabeth's last confirmed whereabouts, but no one had seen or heard from her after that final text message. As days turned into weeks with no sign of Elizabeth, the community rallied with posters and volunteer searches. Meanwhile, investigators delved deeper into the Sullivans' lives, uncovering layers of discord beneath the surface of the couple's seemingly settled exterior. The lack of evidence at the home puzzled investigators, leaving more questions than answers in the early days of the investigation. The serene image of their daily life began to fracture, revealing a mosaic of complexities that hinted at more ominous possibilities than anyone had first imagined. When Elizabeth Sullivan vanished in October 2014, the response was swift and multifaceted. The San Diego Police Department initiated a standard missing person investigation, while the community and Elizabeth's friends launched an extensive search effort, underscored by a creeping sense of urgency and dread. From the onset, Matthew Sullivan's account to the police on October 14th suggested that Elizabeth might have left of her own volition, a narrative that painted her as possibly unstable and needing time away due to their marital strife. This perspective influenced the initial pace and nature of the investigation. The police began by searching the family home, where they found her belongings intact, her car in the garage, and no immediate signs of a struggle or departure. They canvassed the neighborhood, interviewing neighbors and local businesses, but no one reported seeing Elizabeth after the early afternoon of October 13th.
Constant fights, and finally you just lost it and killed her with a knife. That's clearly what the law believes.
No, I see what you're saying, Keith. I'm just saying I was trying to do the right thing.
Simultaneously, Elizabeth's friends and family were adamant that she would never leave her children willingly. They described her as a devoted mother and a vibrant person who was deeply embedded in her community. Their insistence on potential foul play pushed the police to consider more dire scenarios as days passed without a trace of her. Volunteers distributed flyers and organized search parties that combed the local areas where Elizabeth frequently visited. Social media campaigns sprung up, spreading her name and face far beyond San Diego, drawing attention to her mysterious disappearance. These community efforts kept the case in the public eye and added pressure on law enforcement to delve deeper. The police expanded their investigation to include reviewing Elizabeth's financial records, phone logs, and social media accounts. They re-interviewed Matthew multiple times, noting inconsistencies in his timeline of events. As the search extended from days into weeks, the police started to treat the case with the suspicion of foul play, slowly piecing together Elizabeth's last known hours and the troubled undercurrents of her marriage. The tension between the belief in her voluntary disappearance and the suspicion of foul play created a complex web of theories and potential leads. This period was marked by significant community involvement, which not only supported the ongoing investigation, but also highlighted the deep impact Elizabeth had made in her community. The urgency of these efforts reflected the hope and desperation of those who knew her, all clinging to the possibility that she might still be found alive. The dynamics within the Sullivan household were complex and fraught with tension, hinting at a troubled relationship long before Elizabeth's disappearance. Elizabeth and Matthew had been married for several years, but over time, their marriage had shown signs of strain that friends and family could not overlook. They argued frequently, mostly about Matthew's prolonged absences due to his naval career and Elizabeth's feeling of being left to manage their home and children alone. Neighbors often heard loud, disturbing arguments coming from the Sullivan home, suggesting an undercurrent of discord that Elizabeth masked in public with her bright smile. Friends reported that Elizabeth had expressed fears for her own safety in the months leading up to her disappearance. She confided in them about Matthew's unpredictable behavior and her plans to possibly leave him, fearing the marriage was beyond repair. In the initial stages of the investigation, certain clues that would later prove to be critical were unfortunately overlooked. On the night of October 13th, 2014, when Elizabeth was last seen, there was a brief sighting by a neighbor that was not immediately reported to the police. This sighting, which placed Elizabeth at the local park late at night, was initially dismissed as irrelevant. Additionally, several of Elizabeth's personal items, including her diary, were found in the home and initially not considered significant. Her diary, filled with entries about her marital troubles and fears, would later provide crucial insight into her state of mind before she vanished. The police also failed to thoroughly inspect the family computer and phone records during the first few days, missing early opportunities to track her last communications and movements. As weeks turned into months, these overlooked pieces of evidence became the cornerstone of the case, painting a picture of a woman living in fear and possibly planning to escape a life she felt was threatening her well-being. The early missteps in the investigation showed a tragic delay in understanding the gravity of the danger Elizabeth was in, complicating the effort to find her after she had disappeared. On October 6, 2016, nearly 2 years after Elizabeth Sullivan's disappearance, a grim discovery was made that reignited the case with a sense of urgency and horror. It was on this cool autumn morning that local joggers noticed an unusual object floating in the shallow waters of San Diego Bay near Liberty Station, not far from the Sullivan home. The object turned out to be the badly decomposed body of Elizabeth Sullivan. The police were immediately called to the scene, and the area quickly became the center of intense police activity.
Years later, her body was discovered and her husband was convicted for murder. But there's much more to the story that will be shared.
The location was particularly significant. It was a spot that Elizabeth was known to frequent for walks, and it was hauntingly close to the family's home. This proximity raised immediate questions about the circumstances of her disappearance and the efforts made to conceal her body. The San Diego Police Department, along with forensic experts, cordoned off the area, carefully retrieving the body and securing any potential evidence from the surrounding locale.
Elizabeth Sullivan went missing in October 2014. No one knew what happened to her. Did she run away, or was it something worse?
Our missing persons unit did an extensive investigation trying to find her, find out what happened with her, with negative results.
Nearly 2 years later, on October 4th, 2016, police found a human body in the San Diego Bay.
We went out there as a dead body. It was in a state of decomposition. And then through obviously forensically, we were able to eventually identify the body as that of Elizabeth Sullivan.
It was just a few blocks from where Sullivan lived, and police now suspect foul play.
We believe she was murdered, and I can't get into details on why we believe that. It's an important part of our ongoing investigation.
The condition of Elizabeth's body indicated that she had been in the water for an extended period. Initial examinations suggested foul play, and an autopsy later confirmed the cause of death as multiple stab wounds. The discovery shocked the community and the Sullivan family, shattering any lingering hopes that Elizabeth might still be alive. Reactions to the discovery were a mix of grief and outrage. Elizabeth's friends and family, who had spent countless hours searching and hoping for her safe return, were devastated. The police faced renewed scrutiny over their handling of the initial stages of the investigation, particularly why the Bay Area had not been thoroughly searched in the immediate aftermath of Elizabeth's disappearance. This significant find refocused investigative efforts and shifted the narrative from a missing person to a homicide. Detectives revisited old evidence and re-interviewed witnesses, now with the knowledge that Elizabeth had met a violent end. The pressure mounted to uncover how and why she ended up in San Diego Bay, and most importantly, who was responsible for her murder. The discovery of her body not only provided tragic answers, but also posed new questions that the police were determined to answer. As the community mourned, the resolve to seek justice for Elizabeth deepened, compelling law enforcement to unravel the mystery surrounding her untimely death. The case, once cold, was now red-hot with leads to pursue and a killer to catch. As investigators delved into the forensic analysis following the discovery of Elizabeth Sullivan's body, crucial evidence began to surface, providing the missing links needed to piece together the circumstances of her murder. At the forefront of this analysis was the discovery of a kitchen knife, which proved pivotal in connecting Matthew Sullivan to the crime. The knife, stained with Elizabeth's blood, was found hidden within the attic of the Sullivan home, a place few would have thought to look without the incentive of a thorough homicide investigation. The placement and concealment of the knife suggested premeditation and an attempt to obscure any link to the crime scene. Forensic experts tested the DNA on the blade and confirmed it matched Elizabeth's, definitively linking the weapon to her murder. Further examination of the Sullivan home brought to light more damning evidence. Beneath the living room carpet, investigators discovered traces of blood that had seeped through the floorboards. This blood was also tested, and the results confirmed it was Elizabeth's. The pattern and quantity of the blood suggested a violent struggle had occurred, countering Matthew's initial claims of Elizabeth leaving after a verbal altercation. The significance of these findings was profound. The blood evidence under the carpet indicated that not only had Elizabeth been attacked in her own home, but efforts had been made to clean up the scene, further implicating Matthew as he was one of the only people with access and opportunity to orchestrate such a cover-up. These forensic breakthroughs fundamentally shifted the trajectory of the investigation. They not only underscored the theory that Elizabeth had been murdered, but also pointed directly to Matthew having a direct role in her demise. With physical evidence establishing his connection to the murder weapon and the crime scene, the case against Matthew Sullivan began to solidify, guiding the police closer to securing justice for Elizabeth. The investigation had turned a crucial corner, moving from speculative links to concrete evidence that could be presented in court. On January 31, 2018, Matthew Sullivan was arrested at his home in Delaware, nearly 4 years after Elizabeth's disappearance, and more than a year after her body was discovered. This arrest marked a critical turn in a case that had long puzzled investigators and haunted the San Diego community. Matthew's capture was the result of relentless police work and the accumulation of forensic evidence that placed him at the center of the investigation. The breakthroughs included the recovery of the knife used in the murder and the discovery of Elizabeth's blood in their home, which undermined Matthew's claims of innocence and his narrative that Elizabeth had left voluntarily.
Sullivan went missing in October 2014. No one knew what happened to her. Did she run away, or was it something worse?
Our missing persons unit did an extensive investigation trying to find her, find out what happened with her, with negative results.
Nearly 2 years later, on October 4th, 2016, police found a human body in the San Diego Bay.
We went out there as a dead body. It was in a state of decomposition. And then through obviously forensically, we were able to eventually identify the body as that of Elizabeth Sullivan.
It was just a few blocks from where Sullivan lived, and police now suspect foul play.
We believe she was murdered, and I can't get into details on why we believe that. It's an important part of our ongoing investigation.
However, the most shocking revelation came from the details surrounding the method Matthew used to conceal Elizabeth's body. Investigators found that shortly after murdering Elizabeth, Matthew purchased a small freezer, which he used to hide her body within the garage of their Liberty Station home. This detail not only pointed to premeditation, but also indicated the lengths Matthew went to in order to prevent the discovery of his crime. The presence of the freezer was a damning piece of evidence that suggested a calculated effort to store the body temporarily while he planned its ultimate disposal in San Diego Bay. The use of the freezer added a macabre layer to the case, illustrating the cold deliberateness of the act. This detail significantly influenced public and juridical perception, painting a picture of a calculated murderer rather than a spontaneous act of violence. Matthew's arrest brought a mix of relief and horror to those who knew Elizabeth. While it marked a significant step towards justice, it also brought to light the grim realities of her final days. As Matthew was taken into custody, the police and the community hoped to close a painful chapter while grappling with the chilling strategies employed to conceal this heinous crime. The case, now moving towards trial, promised to unveil further details of the dark strategies Matthew employed and to finally offer some semblance of justice for Elizabeth. This trial commenced on February 21, 2020, in a San Diego courtroom filled with tension and anticipation. The case had gripped the community, and now, faced with a wealth of forensic evidence and the chilling details of his efforts to conceal his crime, Matthew stood accused of second-degree murder in the death of his wife, Elizabeth Sullivan.
For this pain that still sits in the pit of my heart. Show no mercy as he has shown no mercy on our angel.
Along with the sentence, the judge ordered Matthew Sullivan to pay restitution fees. He has 60 days to appeal the ruling.
That became romantic and warm very quickly, started to cool.
Separate bedrooms, domestic violence, infidelity, financial issues, and threats of restraining orders. These are the hallmarks of a marriage in crisis.
Prosecutors and defense attorneys presented their opening statements to a jury in the case against Matthew Sullivan. The former Navy sailor is facing a first-degree murder charge for allegedly killing his estranged wife, Elizabeth Sullivan. Elizabeth's body was found in the San Diego Bay in 2016 after she reportedly disappeared in 2014.
She was stabbed to death. and they found 5 different ribs on her left side, on her back, that had nicks or cuts in them.
Today, prosecutors revealed the alleged murder weapon, a knife.
This is the evidence that shows you that the defendant is guilty of murder. He had lots of motive. He had the means. He had the opportunity. The crime scene was in her bedroom. The murder weapon was in the attic over his bedroom.
The defense argued by bringing up Elizabeth's behavior and substance abuse.
What started out as a glass of wine became bottles of whiskey. What started out as marijuana became cocaine. What started out as amphetamine abuse turned into methamphetamine.
Witnesses were called to the stand and were questioned on their relationship with Elizabeth. A judge asked us not to show their faces. If convicted, Matthew Sullivan could face 26 years to life behind bars.
The prosecution presented a methodical case, anchored by the forensic evidence painstakingly gathered over the years. The knife with Elizabeth's blood, found hidden in the attic, was displayed to the jury, a silent testament to the violence of the crime. The experts testified how the blood patterns under the carpet and in the living room were consistent with a struggle and attack, rather than an accidental injury or self-harm, countering one of the defense's potential arguments. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence was the freezer used by Matthew to hide Elizabeth's body. The prosecution detailed how the purchase of the freezer shortly after Elizabeth's disappearance was premeditated, illustrating to the jury the lengths Matthew went to in trying to cover up his crime. They argued that his actions were calculated and deliberate, aiming to erase any traces of his involvement in her death. In contrast, the defense attempted to cast doubt on the integrity of the forensic evidence. They suggested that the time lapse between Elizabeth's disappearance and the discovery of her body could have compromised the DNA evidence. Furthermore, they portrayed Elizabeth as troubled, highlighting her supposed mental health issues and instability, suggesting that her lifestyle and personal choices might have led to her untimely death by other means. This portrayal was met with significant backlash, particularly from women's rights groups who saw it as an attempt to blame the victim. Testimonies from friends and family painted a different picture, one of a vibrant, loving mother whose life was brutally cut short. Elizabeth's friends refuted claims of her instability, describing her fears about Matthew's behavior and her plans to seek a divorce, plans that would never come to fruition. The trial also delved into the couple's troubled marriage, with evidence of multiple police calls to their home for domestic disturbances, further undermining Matthew's portrayal of Elizabeth as the instigator of their marital woes. As the trial progressed, the evidence seemed overwhelming. Every piece presented by the prosecution added to a narrative of control, violence, and deceit. The defense struggled to counter the weight of evidence, focusing instead on procedural discrepancies and the emotional and psychological defenses of a man they claimed was wrongfully accused. The community watched as the trial unfolded, hoping for justice for Elizabeth. The legal battle was not just about proving Matthew guilty, it was about vindicating Elizabeth, who had been silenced in such a tragic way. The trial promised to finally offer answers and accountability in a case that had long haunted those who knew and loved Elizabeth Sullivan. On March 12, 2021, after weeks of trial and extensive testimony, the courtroom was charged with a palpable tension as the jury returned to deliver their verdict in the case of Matthew Sullivan. The community, media, and especially Elizabeth's family and friends held their breath as the verdict was about to reshape many lives.
Do you know when she's going to be returning home also?
I have no idea. She leaves for hours, sometimes days at a time.
A year after his sentence to prison, did you kill her?
No, absolutely not. That's crazy. I've never laid a finger on her. I've never hit her. Nothing like that.
Matthew Sullivan is sitting down with Dateline.
The jury found Matthew Sullivan guilty of second-degree murder. The decision came after a day and a half of deliberation, which reflected the complexity of the case and the weight of the decision the jury had to make. The courtroom was heavy with emotion as the verdict was read. Relief and sorrow mingled in the air, reflecting the dual feelings of Elizabeth's loved ones. Relief that justice was served, and profound sorrow that it would not bring Elizabeth back. Following the verdict, the emotional toll of the trial was palpable. Impact statements from Elizabeth's family were given, providing a heartbreaking insight into the devastation her murder had caused. her mother, with tears staining her cheeks, spoke of the unfillable void left by her daughter's death and the pain of helping her grandchildren understand why their mother would never come home. Elizabeth's friends shared memories of her vibrancy and kindness, emphasizing the injustice of her untimely death. Judge Albert Haratunian did not mince words when it came time to sentence Matthew. He condemned Matthew's actions in stark terms, highlighting the premeditation and cruelty involved in the crime. He spoke directly to Matthew, criticizing him for the cold and calculated manner in which he executed the crime and attempted to cover it up. The judge sentenced him to 16 years to life in prison, a sentence that underscored the gravity of his actions, but did little to ease the pain of those left behind. The conclusion of the trial did not mark the end of grief for Elizabeth's family and friends, but it did bring a sense of closure to the legal aspect of her death. The community could only hope that the verdict would serve as a deterrent to similar crimes, bringing some sense of justice and honor to Elizabeth's memory. As the courtroom emptied, the emotional toll of the trial lingered, a somber reminder of the life lost and the lives forever altered. The trial of Matthew Sullivan closed a chapter on a saga of violence and loss that gripped the community, but it also opened a conversation about broader issues of domestic violence and the often silent battles many endure within the confines of their homes. Elizabeth Sullivan's murder, tragic and brutal, brought to light the stark realities of domestic abuse and the critical need for awareness and proactive interventions. The verdict, while bringing legal closure, served also as a poignant reminder of the person at the center of this story, a beloved mother, a treasured friend, a vibrant community member. Elizabeth was remembered not just for the circumstances of her death, but for the life she led, her aspirations, and the indelible impact she had on those around her. Her life story, marred by violence, became a rallying cry for those who advocate for victims of domestic abuse, underscoring the importance of recognizing the signs and taking action. The trial's outcome also underscored the importance of support systems for those affected by domestic violence, the need for effective legal protections, and the critical role of community awareness in preventing such tragedies. It highlighted the changes needed in how society responds to domestic violence, including better support for survivors, more thorough investigations of abuse allegations, and continued education on the issues surrounding domestic abuse. Elizabeth's memory is honored through ongoing advocacy and awareness efforts that aim to protect others from similar fates. Foundations and community groups have been motivated by her story to push for legislative changes and to provide more comprehensive support for victims of domestic violence. Her story has inspired annual gatherings and memorials that not only remember her, but also affirm community commitment to fighting against domestic violence. As Elizabeth's story continues to influence and inspire change, it serves as a powerful reminder of the human cost of domestic violence and the urgent need for community action. Her legacy lives on in the lives saved and improved through these efforts. The reflections on her life and the circumstances of her death ensure that while she was a victim, Elizabeth Sullivan is remembered for much more. She epitomizes resilience, the will to protect one's family, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Elizabeth Sullivan's tragic death resonated deeply within her community and beyond, becoming a catalyst for heightened awareness and action against domestic violence. Her story has inspired a significant shift in how the community addresses this pervasive issue, highlighting the need for greater support and resources for victims. In the wake of her death, local community leaders, along with activists and volunteers, established the Elizabeth Sullivan Memorial Fund, which aims to support domestic violence victims through education, legal assistance, and direct support services. This fund also works to educate the public about the signs of domestic abuse and the best ways to support those who may be suffering in silence. Furthermore, Elizabeth's story has prompted local schools to implement programs that teach young people about healthy relationships, consent, and the importance of speaking out against abuse. These educational initiatives are Elizabeth's legacy, empowering the next generation with the knowledge and tools to prevent violence in their own relationships. Annual walks and vigils are now held in Elizabeth's memory, serving as communal platforms for solidarity, healing, and raising awareness. These events not only honor Elizabeth, but also provide a space for survivors to share their stories and for the community to affirm its commitment to eradicating domestic violence. Through these efforts, Elizabeth's impact continues to influence lives, shaping a safer, more aware community. As the gavel fell on the final verdict of Matthew Sullivan's trial, it marked not just the conclusion of a legal battle, but also the beginning of healing for those affected by Elizabeth Sullivan's tragic death. Justice, in this case, was served through the diligence of law enforcement, the forensic experts, and the unwavering voices of Elizabeth's loved ones, who advocated tirelessly for truth and accountability. The pain of loss is profound and enduring. Elizabeth's death leaves a void in the hearts of her family and friends that can never be filled. Yet, in the face of this irrevocable loss, there is remarkable resilience. The strength of a community that rallied to support the bereaved and the courage of individuals who, inspired by Elizabeth's story, now fight to prevent such tragedies from befalling others. This documentary has traversed the emotional landscapes of grief, outrage, hope, and resolve, reflecting the complex nature of human relationships and the sometimes painful pursuit of justice. Through Elizabeth's story, we are reminded of the critical importance of community vigilance, the need for robust support systems for domestic violence victims, and the powerful impact of collective action. In remembering Elizabeth, we celebrate her life as much as we mourn her loss, and we commit to carrying forward her legacy in ways that affirm life, dignity, and justice for all. As we move forward, let us take with us the lessons learned from this painful yet poignant journey, holding on to the hope that from the darkest of times, there can emerge light and renewal. On December 25, 2017, Oak Bay, a quiet seaside community in Victoria, Canada, sparkled under the festive lights of Christmas. Homes lined the streets, each window aglow with the soft light of decorated trees and colorful displays of Santa Claus and reindeer. The air, usually brisk and filled with the scent of winter, carried the laughter and chatter of families celebrating the season. Yet, this picturesque setting was starkly disrupted by the piercing sound of police sirens that evening. The sirens converged on a modest family home, the residence of Sarah Cotton. What was meant to be a night of joyous celebrations had taken a dark turn. The flashing blue and red lights cast long, ominous shadows across the snow-covered lawn, hinting at the gravity of the situation unfolding inside. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, watched from their doorways, a mix of concern and curiosity etched on their faces. As the community nestled in the safety of their warm homes, Sarah's house stood eerily silent. The usual cheer of the holiday was overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. What happened in this seemingly peaceful home to draw such urgent attention from the authorities on Christmas Day? Sarah Cotton grew up in Victoria, Canada, where she established her roots in a community known for its closeness and scenic beauty. She was a bright and ambitious woman, characterized by her warm smile and a keen interest in communication and public relations. After graduating from the University of Victoria in 2005, she quickly stepped into the professional world, securing an internship that paved the way for her future career in communications. By 2007, Sarah had joined the Tartan Group, a well-respected public relations firm, where she excelled and quickly made a name for herself through her dedication and the quality of her work. Her early successes in her career were not just a testament to her skills, but also to her genuine passion for connecting with people and telling stories that mattered. Family was always central to Sarah's life. She was particularly close to her father, who was not only a loving parent, but also her greatest supporter. His guidance and protection were constant throughout her life, providing a foundation of security and confidence that Sarah drew upon in all areas of her life. His sudden death in a car accident in 2013 was a devastating blow that shook the very core of her existence, leaving a void that was difficult to fill. The loss deeply affected Sarah, altering her outlook and emotional resilience. It was during this vulnerable time that her relationship with Andrew, whom she had met and married several years prior, began to show signs of strain. The changes in Sarah's life set the stage for a tumultuous period that would challenge her in ways she had never anticipated. Sarah first crossed paths with Andrew Barry in 2009, while they both worked at British Columbia Ferries, a public company providing transport between the mainland and coastal islands of British Columbia. Their initial connection was sparked by mutual interests and shared experiences at work, quickly blossoming into a romantic relationship. Sarah found Andrew's charm and seemingly laid-back attitude refreshing, and it wasn't long before their casual dating evolved into something more serious. In 2010, buoyed by a year of happy memories and shared dreams, Andrew proposed, and Sarah accepted without hesitation. They married in a modest ceremony in Victoria, surrounded by close family and friends. The couple's union marked the beginning of what Sarah envisioned as a lifelong partnership, filled with love, support, and mutual respect, a foundation they hoped to build their future family upon. The birth of Chloe in 2011 and then Aubrey in 2013 brought immense joy to Sarah and Andrew's lives. The couple, now parents, initially embraced their new roles with enthusiasm. However, the demands of parenthood began to reveal cracks in their relationship. Andrew's demeanor changed gradually, his once easygoing nature giving way to moments of unpredictability and frustration. Sarah, deeply committed to her children's well-being, often found herself mediating to maintain peace at home. The situation deteriorated further following the unexpected death of Sarah's father in late 2013. His passing removed a crucial pillar of emotional support from Sarah's life, deeply affecting her resilience and mental state. Her father had been a buffer against Andrew's growing unpredictability, and without him, the household dynamics shifted significantly. Andrew's behavior became increasingly difficult for Sarah to manage, especially as she dealt with her own grief. By 2014, the relationship faced severe strains as Andrew's temper led to verbal altercations that often occurred in front of the children. The environment at home, once a haven for Sarah, began to feel tense and unstable. As the foundation of their marriage weakened, Sarah's efforts to keep the family unit intact became more challenging, setting the stage for further conflicts that would eventually push the couple to their breaking point. Tensions in Sarah and Andrew's marriage reached a critical point in early 2015. Andrew's aggression escalated beyond harsh words to physical confrontations. A particularly alarming incident occurred in April 2015 when an argument spiraled out of control. Andrew, in a fit of rage, pinned Sarah against the wall and began choking her. Terrified, Sarah managed to break free and called the police. This marked a turning point for Sarah, realizing that the safety of herself and her children was at stake. Following the choking incident, Sarah took decisive action. She obtained a restraining order that legally barred Andrew from coming near her or the children. With the law on her side, she felt a temporary relief, but the ordeal was far from over. In the months that followed, the couple initiated divorce proceedings. The process was fraught with challenges, primarily centered around custody of Chloe and Aubrey. The court battles were lengthy and emotionally draining. Sarah fought to ensure that Andrew's access to the children was limited, arguing his unpredictable behavior made him a risk to their safety. The divorce was finalized later that year, granting Sarah full custody of the children, while Andrew was allowed supervised visits only. The court mandated Andrew to pay child support, an obligation he met inconsistently, adding further strain to the post-divorce dynamics. This period marked a new chapter of independence for Sarah, who was determined to rebuild a safe and stable life for her daughters. After their separation and divorce in 2015, Sarah and Andrew entered into a contentious period over the custody of Chloe and Aubrey. The initial custody agreement allowed Andrew only supervised visits, reflecting the court's concerns over his past aggressive behavior. Despite the supervision, these visits were a source of ongoing stress for Sarah, who remained vigilant about the safety of her daughters. The legal battles also extended into financial areas, particularly over child support and the division of property. Andrew was inconsistent in making child support payments, complicating Sarah's financial situation as she strived to provide for Chloe and Aubrey. The court's involvement became necessary to enforce these payments, adding layers of legal disputes to the already strained relationship between Sarah and Andrew. In 2016, another significant legal decision was made regarding the family home. The court ordered Andrew to sell his share of the property to Sarah at a reduced price. The cost of share of the property was $60,000, and Andrew was ordered to sell it for $20,000, considering the outstanding child support. This decision was intended to alleviate some of the financial burden on Sarah while ensuring the children's home environment remained stable. Andrew, however, was displeased with this arrangement, viewing it as unfair and financially disadvantageous. These ongoing legal disputes were not only financially draining, but also emotionally taxing for both parties. The constant back and forth in court, the need for lawyers, and the scrutiny of private family matters added significant stress to Sarah's life. Yet, she remained focused on securing a safe and stable future for her daughters, fighting tirelessly to keep Andrew's influence limited and their living situation secure. The legal battles, while challenging, were a necessary evil to protect her daughters from the instability that Andrew's behavior could bring into their lives. Sarah celebrated her birthday on December 21, 2017, a day filled with small joys and the laughter of her daughters, Chloe and Aubrey. The birthday was marked by a cozy gathering at home, where Chloe and Aubrey helped their mother blow out the candles, their faces lit with excitement. This family celebration was a brief respite from the ongoing challenges Sarah faced, allowing them all to relish in moments of togetherness and love. With her birthday behind her, Sarah turned her attention to preparing for Christmas. She decorated their home with care, hanging stockings, setting up a beautifully adorned Christmas tree, and wrapping presents that sat under the tree, waiting to be opened by excited little hands. Each decoration added to the festive atmosphere, but also weighed on Sarah's heart, as she knew the girls would soon be spending part of their Christmas with Andrew. On the morning of December 25, 2017, Sarah drove Chloe and Aubrey to Andrew's house. As she prepared to leave them there, her emotions were conflicted. She felt uneasy about Andrew's ability to care for their daughters, especially given his past behavior and the current strains in their interactions. Despite the court's assurances and supervised visitation arrangements, Sarah couldn't shake off a deep-seated worry for her daughter's well-being. As she hugged Chloe and Aubrey goodbye, Sarah tried to mask her concern with a smile, encouraging them to enjoy their time with their father. She reminded them that she would see them soon, holding back her anxiety as she waved them off at the doorstep. Driving away, Sarah's car became quieter, the absence of her daughters palpable. She felt a knot in her stomach, a mother's intuition that something was amiss as she headed back to an empty home to wait for their return. On the afternoon of December 25, 2017, as Christmas celebrations continued across Oak Bay, a shadow fell over Sarah's heart. Chloe and Aubrey were due back at noon, but the clock ticked past the hour with no sign of them or a call from Andrew. Sarah's initial worry quickly turned into alarm. She called Andrew's phone multiple times, each call met with silence. No answer came, not even a text. Her attempts to reach him through other means, including messages and emails, also went unanswered. Frustrated and increasingly anxious, Sarah decided she could wait no longer. Accompanied by her mother, she drove back to Andrew's house. As they approached, the lack of festive lights and the silence around the property contrasted sharply with the vibrant holiday spirit seen elsewhere in the neighborhood. The unease deepened when repeated knocks on Andrew's door went unanswered. Peering through the windows revealed nothing. The house appeared unusually still, almost as if abandoned. Sarah's mother suggested they speak with the neighbors. One neighbor recalled hearing laughter from the children in the morning, but noted it had abruptly stopped around noon. Another mentioned hearing unusual noises, like thuds, bangs, and screams, which they had initially dismissed as holiday revelry. With each passing moment, Sarah's worry turned to panic. Realizing the severity of the situation, Sarah dialed 911. The police arrived swiftly. An officer approached the house, finding the front door unlocked. Stepping inside, the festive air gave way to a chilling scene. The entryway was dim, the air stale. Switching on his flashlight, the officer's beam cut through the darkness, revealing a horrifying scene. The walls and floor were smeared with blood, traces leading down the hallway. Following the grim trail, the officer entered the living room, where the Christmas tree stood ironically adorned next to scenes of apparent violence. The search led to the bedrooms. In one, he found a lifeless Chloe lying on her bed, surrounded by blood-soaked gifts. The room was in disarray, bloody, with signs of a desperate struggle. In another bedroom, Aubrey was discovered under similar tragic circumstances, her small body also bearing signs of violence. The officer urgently called for backup, his voice tense over the radio. Additional police units and medical responders were dispatched as the home became a crime scene. The discovery was relayed to Sarah, who was waiting outside, gripped by a mix of hope and dread. When informed of the devastating news, her world shattered. The street filled with the sounds of Christmas was starkly contrasted by her heart-wrenching screams, mourning the unimaginable loss of her daughters. Meanwhile, the police found Andrew in the bathroom, barely alive, with injuries that appeared self-inflicted. His throat was cut, several stabs on the area of his chest, similar to the type of stabs Chloe and Aubrey had. Each of his breaths came in heavier than the last. He was quickly attended to by paramedics who provided first aid before rushing him to the hospital, where he was placed under police guard. His survival meant that he could potentially provide answers to the many questions about what had happened to Chloe and Aubrey. After confirming the situation, the officer who first entered secured the area to ensure no further danger. Additional police and forensic units arrived promptly, setting up a perimeter to preserve the integrity of the crime scene. The forensic team began their meticulous work, documenting every detail, photographing the scene, and collecting physical evidence that could help explain the sequence of events leading to the children's deaths. In the living room and bedrooms, evidence of a struggle was apparent. Toys and gifts were scattered, some stained with blood, telling a silent, harrowing story of the children's last moments. The forensic team carefully collected samples of blood, fingerprints, and fibers, focusing on the bloody bat found near Chloe and the knife wounds on both children, which were consistent with the kitchen knives taken from Andrew's home. As the investigation unfolded inside, Sarah, kept back by police at a safe distance, struggled to comprehend the news of her daughter's deaths. Her anguish filled the cold Christmas air, a stark contrast to the laughter and light of other homes celebrating the day. Family members and friends arrived, drawn by the news, forming a tight circle around her, trying to offer comfort in the face of overwhelming grief. Sarah's reaction was a visceral portrait of a mother's worst nightmare unfolding in real time. In the aftermath of the tragic events on December 25, 2017, the focus swiftly shifted to gathering and processing evidence to piece together the sequence of events that led to the deaths of Chloe and Aubrey Berry. Forensic teams were meticulous in their approach, collecting blood samples, fingerprints, and DNA from the scene. Each item was carefully cataloged to build a comprehensive picture of the crime. The autopsies on Chloe and Aubrey were conducted promptly. The results were heart-wrenching. Chloe had suffered multiple blunt force traumas to her head, which were fatal, along with numerous stab wounds across her body. She was struck hard with a bat, found near her body covered in blood. Her skull was broken. 26 stab wounds were found on her body. The main cause of her death was loss of blood. Aubrey's autopsy revealed a similar brutal attack, with 32 stab wounds, which also caused fatal bleeding. The nature and multiplicity of their injuries indicated a deliberate and sustained attack, which was particularly difficult for all involved to come to terms with. The exact time of their deaths was not possible to identify. It seemed like Andrew stabbed the front and back side of the girls separately, turning them around. Meanwhile, Andrew Berry was found in a critical condition with self-inflicted wounds, suggesting an attempted suicide. He was rushed to hospital, where he was stabilized and placed under intensive care. His injuries included a deep cut to his throat and several stabs to his chest. As he lay hospitalized, guarded by police, the question of his motive and the sequence of events that led him to harm his own daughters became central to the investigation. The evidence gathered from the home and the medical examinations formed the basis of the case against Andrew. The findings from the crime scene were consistent with a violent struggle taking place, contradicting any initial thoughts of an outside intruder. As Andrew began to recover from his injuries, the police prepared to question him, seeking answers that would clarify the events that transpired in that tragic Christmas setting. The investigation into the tragic deaths of Chloe and Aubrey also brought to light Andrew Berry's personal struggles, particularly his escalating gambling addiction, which became severe after his separation from Sarah. His addiction to gambling was not just a personal vice, it had significant financial problems. After losing his job, Andrew's financial stability crumbled, plunging him into deep debt. He was known to frequent casinos, and his financial desperation grew as he borrowed money, unable to keep up with his losses. This financial desperation was highlighted during the trial through evidence and testimonies about Andrew's debts. It was revealed that he owed substantial amounts to various creditors, which some initially speculated might have provided a motive for someone he owed to be involved in the tragic events. However, as the trial progressed, forensic evidence firmly pointed to Andrew as the perpetrator, proving the theory of an outside involvement. On Christmas Eve 2017, a glimpse into a seemingly ordinary family moment was captured. Camera footage showed Andrew Barry shopping with his daughters, Chloe and Aubrey. The video, recorded just hours before the tragic events, depicted them moving through the aisles, picking out last-minute holiday supplies. Another poignant piece of evidence was a letter found at the scene, addressed to Andrew's sister. In the letter, written as if it were his last, Andrew expressed deep frustrations and resentments towards Sarah, blaming her for his troubles. He wrote about feeling betrayed and cornered, providing a chilling insight into his state of mind before the murders. By his letter, he still loved his wife and his daughters. He did not want to live anymore, but also did not want to leave the world without his beloved daughters. This letter explained Andrew's motives. The prosecution used this letter to argue that Andrew's actions were premeditated, stemming from a place of anger and despair. After weeks of emotional testimonies and rigorous examination of evidence, the trial reached its climax. On a solemn day in late 2018, the jury delivered their verdict. Andrew Barry was found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder for the deaths of his daughters, Chloe and Aubrey. The courtroom, filled with tense anticipation, let out a collective, subdued sigh as the verdict was read. Some wept softly, others simply nodded, their expressions a mixture of relief and sorrow. The sentencing phase followed shortly after the conviction. The judge sentenced Andrew to life in prison, with no possibility of parole for 22 years. This decision was met with mixed reactions. While some felt that justice had been served, others, especially those close to Sarah and her daughters, thought that the sentence could never truly compensate for the loss of Chloe and Aubrey. The community, which had followed the case closely and supported Sarah throughout the trial, continued to show their solidarity. The local newspapers and social media were filled with opinions, condolences, and calls for changes to how such cases are handled in the future. The tragic end of 2 young lives not only left a permanent mark on those who knew them, but also on the community that mourned the loss of innocence in such a brutal, heart-wrenching way. No one could predict that a second chance would lead to that. Thank you for joining us in remembering Chloe and Aubrey and reflecting on this poignant story. It is our hope that sharing their story will contribute to heightened awareness and prevention of such tragedies in the future. For now, take care of yourselves and each other, and keep the spirit of compassion and vigilance alive in your communities.
Laura, if you're listening, doesn't matter what's happened, doesn't matter.
Laura Wallen, a beloved social studies teacher at Wild Lake High School, vanished under mysterious circumstances in early September 2017. Just 31 years old and 4 months pregnant, Laura was adored by her students and colleagues alike, celebrated for her vibrancy and dedication to education. She had recently been honored as Teacher of the Year, a testament to her passion and commitment. On September 2, 2017, Laura was seen for the last time. She visited a local Safeway in Olney, Maryland, with her boyfriend, Tyler Tessier, preparing perhaps for the week ahead. But something was amiss. The following days, Laura failed to respond to messages and calls, sparking immediate concern among her family and friends. It was uncharacteristic of Laura, who was known for her reliability and communicative nature, to drop off the radar without any notice. Her sudden disappearance triggered a frantic search. As news spread, the community rallied in hope of finding her safe and sound, clinging to any piece of information that could lead to her whereabouts. But with each passing day, hope dwindled and suspicion grew, casting a shadow over those Laura had left behind. What happened to Laura Wallen in those final days? The quest to uncover the truth would soon reveal a tangled web of deceit, love, and betrayal, deeply shaking the small community of Columbia, Maryland. Laura Wallen was more than just a teacher. She was a guiding light in her community. Residing in Columbia, Maryland, Laura was deeply entrenched in the lives of her students at Wild Lake High School, where she taught social studies. Recognized for her innovative teaching methods, Laura was awarded Teacher of the Year in 2016, a clear indicator of her passion and dedication. At 31, not only was she shaping young minds, but she was also preparing to step into a new role as a mother, a journey she embraced with open arms. Laura's excitement for her future as a mom was palpable. Her pregnancy brought joy not only to her, but also to her parents, Mark and Gwen Wallen, who were looking forward to welcoming their grandchild. However, Laura's personal life harbored secrets that were hidden behind the smiles and the accolades. At the heart of these secrets was Tyler Tessier, her boyfriend. Tyler, also from Columbia, Maryland, had been in a tumultuous on and off relationship with Laura for several years. Despite their rocky history, Laura saw a future with him, unaware of the double life he led. Tyler was simultaneously engaged to another woman, Christina Wagner, a fact he meticulously kept from Laura. His engagement to Christina was not the only aspect of his deceit. Tyler had proposed to Christina with the same ring he showed to Laura as a symbol of their future. Christina Wagner, a teacher like Laura, was unknowingly entangled in Tyler's web of lies. She believed her relationship with Tyler was exclusive and was planning their wedding, scheduled for a date shockingly close to Laura's due date. Tyler's manipulation extended beyond his engagements. He spun tales of a fabricated stalker he claimed was harassing him, a story he told to both women to cover up his tracks and elicit their sympathy. The complexity of Tyler's double life began to unravel after Laura's disappearance, as the search for her exposed the layers of deceit. Tyler had told Christina that Laura, whom he described as an obsessive ex, had mental health issues, further complicating the narrative and painting himself as the victim. This web of lies not only misled Laura and Christina, but also set the stage for a tragic unraveling that captivated the Columbia community and beyond. Amidst the happy news of her pregnancy, Laura Wallen's life was shadowed by complicated personal relationships, primarily involving Tyler Tessier, her boyfriend. In July 2017, Laura found out she was pregnant. Ecstatic, she shared the news with Tyler and her family, expecting a new chapter filled with joy. However, the dynamics of her relationship with Tyler were not as they seemed. Tyler, entangled in deceit, was also engaged to another woman, Christina Wagner, whom Laura had no knowledge of until later. Laura's discovery of Tyler's engagement to Christina was a shocking betrayal, prompting her to seek answers directly from the source. In late August 2017, just days before her disappearance, Laura texted Christina in a bid to uncover the truth. Her message was poignant and filled with a mix of confusion and desperation. "Hi, Christina. This is Laura Wallen. I think it's important we talk about Tyler. I'm not sure what he's told you, but I'm pregnant and he's the father. I just found out about you, and I'm trying to understand the situation. It seems like we both might have been misled." Christina's response was one of surprise and confusion. She had believed her relationship with Tyler was exclusive and had no prior knowledge of his relationship with Laura reaching such a depth. Tyler, caught in the middle, fabricated stories to both women to keep his deceit from unraveling. He told Christina that Laura was an obsessed ex-girlfriend who was refusing to move on. To Laura, he claimed Christina was stalking him, which explained any odd encounters or pieces of information Laura might come across. Tyler dissuaded both women from involving the police or seeking external help by claiming it would only escalate the supposed stalking and harassment issues into more dangerous territory. His manipulation extended deeply, using lies about mental health and police ineffectiveness to keep both women isolated from the truth and from each other. When Laura shared her pregnancy news with her parents, her father, Mark Wallen, approached Tyler directly to discuss his intentions. Tyler's response was to reassure Laura's father, showing him an engagement ring and claiming his commitment to Laura and their unborn child. He promised marriage and a future together, placating Mark's concerns temporarily with well-rehearsed lies. This conversation occurred just days before Laura's mysterious disappearance, marking Tyler's last-ditch effort to maintain his facade. Laura Wallen was last seen on September 2, 2017. That day, she and Tyler Tessier were captured by surveillance cameras at a Safeway store near her home in Olney, Maryland. They were stocking up on groceries, possibly for the week ahead. Everything seemed normal to any onlooker, but the undercurrents of her personal life were anything but. The following day, September 3, 2017, was when everything changed. Tyler had planned a trip to a secluded field in Damascus, Maryland. Under the guise of showing Laura a plot of land he claimed they could consider for their future home. Unbeknownst to Laura, this serene setting would soon turn into the backdrop of her mysterious disappearance. The next day, September 4, 2017, marked the beginning of the school year at Wild Lake High School, where Laura was supposed to welcome a new class of eager students. Her classroom, prepped with care and enthusiasm, remained untouched that day. Laura's uncharacteristic absence alarmed her colleagues and students, sparking immediate concern. It was unlike Laura to miss the first day of school without prior notice, and her silence sent ripples of worry through her community. When Laura did not return calls or texts, her family's worry deepened. Her father, Mark Wallen, driven by a growing sense of dread, contacted the police to report her missing. The police investigation quickly uncovered that not only was Laura missing, but her car was nowhere to be found. This discovery escalated the seriousness of her case. Tyler, when questioned by the police, presented a story that conflicted with the troubling facts surfacing. He claimed that after their date on September 3rd, they had returned to Laura's home. According to Tyler, an argument ensued. Laura was upset and angrily demanded that Tyler leave, which he did. He further claimed that they had arranged to meet the next morning, September 4th, at a local cafe to talk things over. However, Laura never showed up for the meeting, nor did she return to her home or contact any of her friends or family. Tyler's narrative did little to ease the concerns of Laura's family or the police, especially as it became clear that he was the last person to see her before she vanished. The field where Tyler took Laura was expansive, isolated, and the kind of place one might choose for privacy or a quiet talk. It was here in this desolate location that Laura's fate took a dark turn. The police, piecing together Tyler's last known movements with Laura, decided to search this area thoroughly. The field soon became the center of a grim police investigation as the last place Laura was known to be alive. This sequence of events, the final sightings, the missed first day of school, the desperate calls from her family, and Tyler's suspicious account of their last interactions, set the stage for a deeply troubling case. Each step Laura took towards that field seemed to lead further away from safety and closer to the heartbreak that awaited her loved ones. The search for Laura Wallen was now not just a matter of finding her, but also uncovering the truth hidden in the shadows of those final days. On September 4th, 2017, when Laura Wallen did not show up for the first day of school, it immediately raised alarms. Her classroom sat prepared, her lesson plans indicating a readiness that contrasted sharply with her absence. Known for her punctuality and dedication, her not turning up was out of character and prompted concern from colleagues and students alike. Her family, growing increasingly anxious with every unreturned call, reported Laura missing to the local police that same day. Her father, Mark Wallen, was particularly proactive, reaching out to the Montgomery County Police Department by late afternoon. The police began their investigation with routine checks, which initially hinted at a standard missing person case until the discovery of Laura's car escalated the situation. Laura's black Ford Escape was found on September 5, 2017, in a suburban parking lot a considerable distance from her home, but oddly close to her school, Wild Lake High School. The vehicle was abandoned. Her driver's license and a broken cell phone were discarded in a nearby dumpster, signs that foul play might be involved. These items were collected as evidence, pointing to a disruption in Laura's usual careful habits and suggesting she had not left willingly. The police then widened their search efforts, combing through local woods and fields near the last known locations of Laura's cell phone signals. Community volunteers joined the effort, distributing flyers and setting up online campaigns to spread awareness and gather any potential information from the public. Tyler Tessier, Laura's boyfriend, was brought in for questioning early in the investigation. He provided an account of his last interactions with Laura, which initially seemed to align with routine couple disagreements. Tyler told the police they had argued on the night of September 3, 2017, but had planned to meet the next morning to reconcile. His narrative stated that Laura had asked him to leave after their argument, a request he complied with, leaving her at her residence unharmed. However, as detectives delved deeper, Tyler's timeline began to show cracks. Security footage from the area around Laura's home and the location where her car was found did not support his version of events. His phone records contradicted his stated movements on those critical days. Each piece of evidence began to paint a concerning picture, suggesting that Tyler might know more about Laura's disappearance than he initially revealed. The field where Tyler claimed they had planned to build their home became a focal point of the search. On September 13, 2017, the search teams made a grim discovery there. Laura's body was found in a shallow grave in the same field Tyler had described as their future property. This discovery shifted the investigation dramatically, from a missing person case to a homicide investigation, with Tyler Tessier at the center as the prime suspect. As the investigation into Laura Wallen's disappearance intensified, the police began to piece together a troubling picture, centering increasingly on Tyler Tessier. Despite his initial portrayal as a concerned boyfriend, inconsistencies in his story soon emerged. By September 13, 2017, police had gathered enough evidence to transition their search into a full-scale criminal investigation. The breakthrough came when detectives decided to use Tyler himself as an unwitting tool in their investigation. They arranged a press conference, purportedly to gather public support and information. Tyler was invited to speak, presenting him as a grieving partner, which he accepted. Unknown to him, this was a strategic move by the police, who were already viewing him as a prime suspect. His demeanor and statements at the conference were carefully analyzed for inconsistencies and potential slips. In parallel, detectives scrutinized the digital footprints left by Laura and Tyler. Text messages retrieved from Laura's phone were particularly revealing. One conversation with her sister Jennifer on the day she disappeared showed her growing apprehension. She texted, "I'm with Tyler in Damascus. He's been acting odd. I'm not sure what's happening. We're supposed to be looking at property, but it doesn't feel right." Furthermore, after Laura's disappearance, Tyler sent misleading texts from Laura's phone to her sister, trying to fabricate a narrative that Laura was worried her ex-boyfriend Antoine, not Tyler, was the father of her unborn child. He even misspelled the ex-boyfriend's name in these messages, a mistake that raised suspicions and indicated he was trying to manipulate the situation. "Tyler isn't the baby's father. It's Antoine. I don't think I can go home tonight. I might go somewhere to think." Investigators also uncovered that Tyler had returned to the field more than 10 times after Laura's disappearance. Text to a friend requesting help to clean up a mess further implicated him, though the friend refused to assist. The discovery of Laura's body was the grim culmination of these efforts. On September 13th, using dogs and following tire tracks that matched Tyler's vehicle, police found Laura in a shallow grave in the Damascus field she had last texted her sister about. She had been shot in the back of the head with a .22 caliber rifle, a methodical, execution-style killing that pointed to premeditation. Forensic analysis matched the tire tracks to Tyler's vehicle, and the dogs alerted exactly where Laura was buried, under a piece of purple fabric that matched her last known outfit. These pieces of evidence, combined with Tyler's multiple trips to the field and his inconsistent accounts, led to his arrest shortly after the body was discovered. Tyler's fabricated stories crumbled under the weight of his own actions and the diligent work of the investigators. His staged emotions at the press conference, his frantic cover-up efforts, and the forensic evidence all painted a clear picture of his guilt, leading to his charge of first-degree murder. On September 30th, 2017, Laura Wallen was laid to rest in a solemn ceremony attended by family, friends, and members of the community. Her funeral was not just a moment to mourn, but also to remember her vibrant life and the joy she brought to so many. Alongside Laura, her unborn son, whom she had planned to name Reed, was also honored and remembered. The dual loss of Laura and her unborn child was a poignant reminder of the future they might have had adding to the community's grief. After Tyler Tessier's arrest, he faced charges of first-degree murder. The case against him was strong, with digital evidence and forensic analysis all pointing to his involvement in Laura's death. Tyler's defense team prepared to challenge the prosecution's evidence, focusing on procedural issues and the legitimacy of the evidence collection methods. They argued that Tyler had not been properly Mirandized before some of his statements were made, which could potentially make those statements inadmissible in court. The legal debates and pretrial hearings were intense, as prosecutors aimed to prove Tyler planned the murder after Laura confronted him about his other relationships. On the morning of September 6, 2018, as the trial was about to commence, Tyler Tessier was found dead in his jail cell. He had committed suicide, using a bedsheet to hang himself. This sudden end to his life meant that the trial would never proceed, leaving many questions about his motives and potentially other details of the case unanswered. For Laura's family, the news of Tyler's suicide was another devastating blow in a saga of immense pain. Although this act denied them the closure of seeing him held accountable in a court of law, the legal system continued to process the findings of the investigation to at least provide some form of justice for Laura and her unborn son, Reed. The tragic death of Laura Wallen resonated deeply within her community and the educational sector. On September 30, 2017, a large congregation of family, friends, students, and colleagues gathered to pay their respects at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church in Silver Spring, Maryland. The service not only mourned her loss, but also celebrated her life and the positive impact she had made on so many. In honor of Laura and her dedication to teaching, Wild Lake High School established a scholarship fund in her name, aimed at supporting students aspiring to become educators. This scholarship serves as a lasting tribute to Laura's passion for education and her belief in the power of learning to change lives. Additionally, the school held memorial events and dedicated a section of their library as a quiet reflection area named in her memory. These actions were a testament to the profound bond Laura had formed with her community and her enduring influence on her students. Her colleagues described her as a beacon of kindness and enthusiasm, and the memorial initiatives ensured her legacy would continue to inspire future generations. Laura Wallen's case captured widespread media attention, highlighting the severe issues surrounding domestic violence and the dangers of intimate partner violence. Major networks and local news channels extensively covered the search for Laura, her relationship with Tyler Tessier, and the shocking developments following her disappearance. The media also played a crucial role in shaping public discourse on the safety of pregnant women and the need for more stringent protective measures for them. As we remember Laura Wallen, let us honor her memory by fostering a supportive and vigilant community. Let her legacy inspire us to cherish and protect those around us, to recognize the signs of distress in our loved ones, and to take action against violence and deceit. We must strive to create a safer environment for all, particularly the most vulnerable among us. Laura's story, tragic in its unfolding, reminds us of the critical need for awareness and change. Together, let's pledge to make a difference, ensuring her spirit lives on in the positive actions we take forward. Thank you for joining today's crime.